Black as midnight, black as pitch, blacker than the foulest witch. Welcome to the Eight Guys podcast. I'm Rob, that's Liam, and this week we watched the best Tom Cruise film ever made. Of course, I'm talking about Legend. As well as Tom Cruise, the film stars Mia Sara and a very sexualized Tim Curry, who I'm sure has some dirty fan fiction floating around on the internet. Directed by Ridley Scott, Legend tells the story of a green man from the forest, Jack, who, to turn on his princess missus, he shows her a horny horse. Once the horse loses the horn and is killed by Blix, who, along with his pig friend, seamlessly disappear after giving the horn to the darkness, it is up to Jack and his forest friends of four to defeat the darkness, rescue the other horny horse, and battle all three of the darkness's horde. Oh, also, where did that space gate at the end come from?
I don't know. Where is his lair? I was like, is he drifting off into space? Where the hell is he going?
There's a space gate, and we went straight to the end. But also, they had to go down for Gwildor, and I'm calling him Gwildor, by the way, to climb all the way to the top of that chimney with the massive plate.
You say all the way to the top. That's one of the issues with this film, is that there's no sense of journey. And it's because the movie, fundamentally above all else, just feels too small. It's like, God, I'm going to get on a negative one here, aren't I? But I was trying to figure out why I find it, despite the fact that this film is technically brilliant on so many levels, why I found it so visually abrasive at all times.
I'll give you that, because there's only 12 people in this entire fucking film, dude. Like, the Princess Lily, like, she's a princess, but apparently her constituents are like two people and a frozen baby, which really upset me. By the way, I don't remember seeing the frozen baby before, but once again, after becoming a father, I noticed that shit. And like, the darkness had Blix and the War Pig, and then they disappeared. And then you had the two guys who loved putting people into pies, and then they got taken out. And then all of a sudden, you had the Jawas from Star Wars, the little fucking
They should. And one of the guards looked a little bit like Pyramid Head from Silent Hill, which I thought was kind of cool. And I think rather more than like the small cast, it was actually the way it's shot, because, as I said, there's a lot of talent has clearly gone into this film. We will talk about that in a moment. Like, in terms of like the set design, production design across the board, the cinematography, the makeup, it's all really top tier stuff. But I kept watching this film and I was like, like I said, I don't like the look of it. It's like, I can appreciate the brilliance of it. And if you looked at any single frame for this movie, you'd be like, that looks really impressive. But everything is just, it's too small and it's too fucking busy. It's like everything feels cramped and superficial. And I think it's because it was shot exclusively on the 007 stage at Pinewood. And on top of that, there were no establishing shots to give you any sense of how big this world was. So everything feels like a collection of vignettes, a collection of like small sequences where it's like, oh, you're very aware that you're on this small, albeit beautiful set. They'll push in like a handful of characters and then they just move on to the next one. But no, you think about what made it work in, say, something like Lord of the Rings. And you think of those like wide shots, how important those wide panning shots were in New Zealand to give you a sense of how far they're traveling. There's none of that here. It's just, oh, they're here, they're there. And it's, a bunch of beautiful shots, but I never really got a sense of what the world was about. And of course, none of that is backed up either by a script which is so threadbare.
It's funny, though, you say that, right? Because I enjoy this film. As a Tom Cruise film, I do enjoy it. I wouldn't say I love it, but I do enjoy it. But I fucking hate Lord of the Rings. I hate those films.
But you can appreciate, like how
I can't. We've had this decision before.
Surely you can objectively appreciate that they really well.
Because if I don't like something, I'm not going to look for the good in it. Like, I just won't. And this is
aren't you glad that one of us does that? Because if I was going into this film based purely on whether I enjoyed this film, it would just be an hour and a half of me just shitting on this film, because it's a rough watch. My wife, thank God she's not on this podcast, she absolutely despised this movie. And I'm sure you're just saying it as a wind-up. But to say that this is Tom Cruise's best movie is one of the most patently ludicrous things you've ever said.
Because I can't stand Tom Cruise, so I have trouble with any of his other films. I like this film. But
do you know why? I think it's because, actually, if I'm trying to make sense of that statement, which is tricky, but I'll try. It's because Tom Cruise is such a non-entity in this film, despite the fact that he's objectively the lead. he just nothing lands with him. It's like, yeah, he's like the classic hero. He's got nothing to latch onto. I think he's just Tree Boy who falls out of the into the woods, rocks up with Mia. There's no real chemistry between those two. They kind of go on this journey, but like you said, there's nothing narratively to back it up. All I remember about him is I'll give him this. His hair is magnificent. Like it's Atreyu level hair. It's absolutely gorgeous. And the fact that all of his tunics, whether it be golden armor or otherwise, are probably at least 4 or 5 inches too short. Disturbingly short tunics.
Well, I don't know. I didn't think I thought the gold one looked more like an Udi. Like it was just hanging over him. It was really weird.
I'll tell you what made the problem is like they were short by design, but then he spends most of the time kind of like crouched over, like in a squat position.
But also, how do you make something on Tom Cruise short?
Yeah, how does that even happen? The
other weird thing about tall, if he's anything,
it's weird in this film because I watch it and he looks both simultaneously old and young. I was amazed to hear that this was the last film he did before Top Gun. He appears like 10 years older in Top Gun. It's really strange.
I didn't know, like, because he's 24 in his film. So was he 24, 25 when he did Top Gun?
Yeah, this was between Risky Business and Top Gun. And to me, and maybe it's just because of where I placed this movie in my head when I was younger, I thought he did this when he was really young. I thought he was like 19 or something. But like you said, he's in his mid-20s. This is Top Gun era Tom Cruise, but it doesn't feel like it feels like he lost his charisma somewhere between Risky Business and Top Gun for Legend, and then it kind of reappears briefly.
I don't know. See, I don't think he's charismatic. I've never thought Tom Cruise was charismatic, so I've never had a problem like that side of it. I just for this film, I think it does have trouble with pacing. It has trouble with the largeness of what it's meant to be, the grandeur, should we say? Because it's meant to be all over the forest, and then the darkness has his. I was going to say his house, his palace, or wherever it is, somewhere
his
next
space
to the
palace,
forest.
Possibly, whatever.
Yeah, space palace that's underground. Okay, whatever. And it just it doesn't feel like any grandeur within this film. I get that. There's no overarching scale, but
it's because the screenplay is just so. Like he had nothing to work with. Like William Hjortsberg wrote the screenplay, and basically all that happened was because if he worked with a unicorn at the end of Blade Runner, Ridley Scott decided, I want to do another movie, a fantasy movie which includes unicorns. So he's just basically given a copy of the book Fairy and said, I'll just go off and write a screenplay with nothing else to back it up. So of course the law surrounding this, the screenplay, everything is just threadbare, and you can feel it in every inch. I know you're not a fan of Lord of the Rings, but all the best fantasy, whether it be video games, novels, movies, whatever, it's because they're based on these worlds where you feel like you're getting a hint of the wider world. With this, whether it be literally visually or thematically, narratively on that side as well, everything feels so compartmentalized and small. So I just didn't really get a feel. And I didn't even think about the fact that you brought up that there's like 12 characters in this film. Why do we give a shit? I don't know what Lily's character is even like. Is she a princess?
Yeah, she's a princess.
Does she have a kingdom?
She's a princess whose kingdom consists of 3 people. One guy was sleeping, one woman was hanging the washing on the line, and you had the baby. Like, are they just on the edge of the kingdom? Like, she just left the palace and gone there? Okay, that's fine. And then Gump arrives. He's meant to be playing Pan, I'm guessing. Like, but maybe you can't do Pan, so he's Gump. Okay, that's fine. Oh, and changing the subject, I was looking at Gump, right? Gump played by an actor called David Bennett, or Bennett, who is famous for a film. I can't remember the name of it right now, so I'm going to look for it. Where he was an 11-year-old boy who had sex with an adult.
Oh, that's lovely. Well, he specializes in weird roles then, because this is indeed a weird role. I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, it sounds like it was an accident because he was Austrian and they were worried about his accent. They got him. He was dubbed by Alice Payton, who was the Goblin, Blix, the main Goblin guy. Yeah. Blix. So Blix was voiced by a female actor, and they decided for her to also voice Gump instead, which on paper
Blix played. She played Blix.
Yeah,
she played. Voice it. She played him. Yeah.
Yeah, she played Blix. Yeah. I do apologize. So naturally voiced him, but then she also voiced Gump. But instead of giving him like a feminine or a childlike voice, she gives him a fucking man's voice. And it just, right, it speaks to the rest of this film. And, you know, this all comes back to the fact that there were 15 different rewrites for this film. There are 3 different versions. The studio got heavily involved and wanted to turn it from the very dark original screenplay provided by William Hjortsberg, which goes a long way to just, you know, basically explaining what happened with Darkness, which we'll get to later, obviously, and how sexually fucking charged he was. But you end up with a character that feels just weird. Like, not even bad, but it feels like it belongs in a different film. And that was one of my... Gump. Not Gump. Is that his name?
Yeah, Gump. Yeah.
Gump. Because he sounds like a man but looks like a kid, it all has this dark fantasy air about it. And you can feel this ominous nature of the set design and like the underlying narrative of the film. But it's all been sheared away by a company who basically wanted to make a live action Disney film. And all they've ended up doing is making a mess of a film which doesn't work on either end of the spectrum.
You had Gump as the keeper of the forest, and then you had his weird cohorts, and we'll get to, what was it, Screwball and Black Tom and stuff. So he was in a film, like I said, called The Tin Drum. And I want to read this to you because the film features scenes in which Bennant, then 11 years of age and playing a stunted 16-year-old, licks effervescing sherbet powder from the navel of a 16-year-old girl, played by Katharina Talbach. Talbach was 24 years old at the time. Subsequently, Bennant appears to have oral sex and then intercourse with her. In 1980, the version of The Tin Drum was first cut and then banned as child pornography by the Ontario Censor Board in Canada.
God, and then is it a German film or is it actually filmed in Canada?
I don't think it was filmed
in Canada, but it couldn't have been. Oh my! Well, either way, wherever it is.
I think it's a German film, but he then went on from doing that to being Gump.
Like I said, Gump is a weird character, but I don't want to get, before we move on, I do want to stress that for all its faults and its limitations and the fact that it's so tonally inconsistent, and I mean on every single level, whether because it's weird because the narrative itself is both somehow overly simplistic, but then at times completely incomprehensible. And that I think as well, it's like a big part of that are the visuals. But as I mentioned, it is worth stating just how great so much of this looked, even if I found it visually kind of disorienting. It's like Rob Bottin, who's the makeup artist, he worked on The Thing and RoboCop, so you know that guy's legit. It got an Oscar nod for Best Makeup, which it totally deserves, and BAFTA nods for makeup, costume design, and visual effects. It's like gorgeously shot. The cinematography by Alex Thompson was awarded Best Cinematography by the British Society of Cinematographers. And the production designs by Ashton Gorton, blah, 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 and we can talk about the score later. But there's so much about this where you're like, on paper, it should be brilliant. Like, there's so many talented people doing great work, and this film cost $25 million in 1984/1985, and you can see it all up on screen. That's, you know, very expensive for the time. But I just don't know why it just always... Did you not find it just a bit too busy at all times? Like, what was up with all the glitter and the fucking bubbles? They were just
in the forest, dude.
Dude, there needed to be 80% less glitter and bubbles, at least. It's insane. I found watching this far too intense. What it reminded me of was like a perfume ad. I kept expecting like Adam Driver to show up like as a centaur. It's very strange.
You mentioned the costume design. We can't go without mentioning Day Murch, who we interviewed on this podcast. I want to know the interview because they was the costume maker for this. But I loved it. Right, as soon as I saw the glitter, I said Liam's gonna have an issue with this. And then randomly they're in the forest and there's bubbles and there's the one, and then there's the one cliff that they keep going to dive into the water and it's
that last shot. I mean, this film
where did the snow come from?
God, no, this film is visually overall up until the very last sequence. When he dives out the water, I was just like, fucking give it a break. It's just, I found watching this film oddly stressful, but at the same time, I'm still appreciating it. Like the makeup and the creature design in particular is absolutely amazing. Of course, Tim Curry as Darkness steals the show, like super iconic.
But he looks fucking fantastic.
He looks unbelievable. But then
his neck, his poor neck.
Meg looked. Oh, sorry.
I say his poor neck. Those fucking horns must have weighed a ton. And also, I have to ask,
phallic cock horns is what he's got.
Were they were they Tim Curry's abs or were they
costume? No, of course they weren't. It was all costume. It was they big 100%, dude. He didn't have abs. Fucking come on, man. He was too busy doing coke in 1984. They basically put a whole nother human on top of him. But the important thing that they did for all the prosthetics, what they left alone largely, despite the was his face.
Yeah.
And he's so expressive, which I think is important. And the thing is, even though like he's absolute, like whatever you want to call him, darkness, devil, whatever, he is swole as fuck. Yeah. Like, does he need to be that?
That scene when he's running towards Jack works. At the end, it looked like if that guy gets hold of you, he is gonna fuck you up. Like,
he is gonna mess you. And that is like the same with a lot of characters. Like you mentioned earlier, is it Blix, the goblin?
Blix, yeah.
Looks amazing. I thought
Blix looks amazing. The pig horse thing, I didn't know his name. That was the only name I didn't know.
Yeah.
Pox. Sorry, Pox.
Mm-hmm.
Pox looked amazing. I think they look great. So, but that side of it looked fantastic. Meg Mucklebones,
gorgeous. Meg was. I couldn't believe that was in a kids' film. That bit was like proper Evil Dead 2 shit.
That was played by Robert Picardo as well, by the way.
Was it really?
Yeah. So
that's bonkers.
You had Meg Mucklebones, great, but then for some reason they were like, "Oh, we've run out of budget on this, so just get a kid to be Gump." And the other guys, just put I don't know, get them to grow their hair out.
That's fine.
The good guys just looked rough compared to the old to the bad guys.
Yeah, that's where that's where the interest lie was, the creature design on the, the bad guy side. But, like you said, it all gets blown out of the water by Darkness, by Tim Curry. But the strange thing is, because obviously, I'm just in case it wasn't clear, this is the first time I've ever seen this film. I thought I'd seen it before. I definitely hadn't seen it. I'd seen bits of it. And as a child, I remember watching this and deciding it wasn't for me because I just aesthetically, I couldn't get on board with it. But I was like, dude, that was like 30 odd years ago. I can go back to this. I can appreciate I'm a big Ridley Scott fan. I'm obviously a massive Tom Cruise fan. And as soon as I started watching this, I was like, well, this doesn't make any sense. And it looks stressful. But the one thing I would give it, as much as I found, like I said, incomprehensible is maybe the word I would use most regularly when describing any element of this film. But what it does is it comes together for the last 30 minutes and it's perfectly in line with when Tim Curry shows up. When he steps out the mirror, I'm going to be stepping on favorite scene here, it looks unbelievable. That is the one thing they knew they had. They knew they had something special with the character design for Tim Curry and Tim Curry's performance. He steps out and immediately makes this the kitsch movie that it should have been from the start. They abandon any pretense of this being a Disney film, and it suddenly becomes the weird as fuck movie that this really should have been. Because make no mistake, there's a really good film in here, and it's kind of there for the last 30 minutes. But too much studio interference gets in the way.
I love when you get passionate about films, right? Whether you like them or hate them, you got to remember this is a 2-part conversation.
I know, but I have to before I pass out. I'm like, if I don't get this out of my system, that's it. But
him coming out of the mirror looked absolutely fantastic. It still holds up. I had that written down. It still holds up. What I do love as well, you go into. I say this quite a lot. You go into all this stuff about how it looked and how it makes you feel, and this part could have been better. And like the last half hour, and all I had written down was. When she screams for Jack at the beginning, she sounds like Bette Midler calling for Book.
It's a relevant note, though. It's a relevant note. And make no mistake, right? My wife immediately turned on Lily in this film. As soon as the film started, she's like, God, Mia Sara. Is it Mia Sara is the character? And sorry. And Lily's the character. I do apologize. She's fans are so annoying. And I thought she summed up the movie perfectly. She's very pretty, but for some odd reason, everything about her is kind of annoying. And I know I'm upsetting a lot of people because clearly, as we found out on Facebook, people apparently love this film. And I can't quite figure it out because, right, remember a couple of weeks ago, we did the Never-Ending Story.
And I had that written down.
Very similar relationship. I remember trying it when I was younger, never got on board with it. Revisit as an adult, and it does have its faults, but I can totally see the appeal. This is a largely bad movie with some very good individual elements which don't come together at all.
This is funny. It's usually me shitting on people's childhoods, not you.
I know. And I do apologize. Make no mistake, I wanted to like this film. And it's so weird that, right, this film has kind of invited me to look back over Ridley Scott's career. And it's weird, like he's had such a bonkers career, because when anybody thinks of Ridley Scott, they obviously think about these 3 or 4 like peak moments. Like, whatever else happens, he'll always have Alien, he'll always have Blade Runner, and to an extent, he'll always have Gladiator. I know you're not the biggest fan, but it's this iconic movie. But he has these massive troughs. Like when this came out, he needed a hit, and this wasn't it because it was coming off the back of Blade Runner, which we all revere now, but it wasn't a hit back in 1982 or whatever it was released. So this was a flop, but like the 80s, and again, a lot of his decades are quite quiet. I always think of Ridley Scott as being quite a prolific director, but a lot of that came after Gladiator in 2000. So in the 80s, it's like Blade Runner in 81, Legend 85, Someone to Watch Over Me in 87, I haven't even heard of. And his one big hit, bizarrely, was Black Rain. So he had a really mixed decade, but I was like, oh, I'll be fine. The 90s really kicked off for him. Well, it started well with Thelma and Louise, but then there was G.I. Jane, 1492, Conquest of Paradise with Gerard Depardieu and Sigourney Weaver. Never heard of it. And it didn't really set off again until 2000 with Gladiator. So he's had these massive peaks and troughs as a director. And yeah, it's just really interesting because, of course, he'll always have those like 3 or 4 core movies. But looking back, I was like, man, Ridley Scott's made a lot of like properly bang average movies. It's crazy.
I can always forgive him though, but this is for later. When you think of Ridley Scott, I'm not a huge fan of the film everyone seems to love, like you said, Gladiator and stuff like that. But I'll always have time to give Ridley Scott a go because of The Martian. Fucking love The Martian. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I don't know why. Nothing happens in it except he grows some potatoes on Mars. But
well, it's incredibly true to the book. I think he is an adaptation. It works, because I read like the book as well. And it's just a well-made film. And a lot of his films are fundamental. Like, if nothing else, he's a very visual director, and you get that with this. But sometimes, you know, if you look back to his history, like he started off doing like adverts and stuff like that. And I think his currency rather than narrative was initially, at least, were visuals. And sometimes he gets a bit carried away with that. You could even point that towards films like Gladiator, which look fantastic. You're like, is it a little bit narratively vacuous underneath? Some people will disagree. You might obviously agree because you're not a big fan. But when it doesn't work for Ridley Scott, it really doesn't. He's almost like the ultimate peak and trough director. And I think that's why people keep giving him money, because when he does get it right, like, people forget how fucking big of a hit The Martian was. I think it's his biggest film ever in terms of box office. But even historically, like when he hits and he gets something right, and it's an Alien, it's a Blade Runner, it's a Martian, they're massive. But for every one of those, there's 4 films which kind of fall flat on their face.
Oh yeah,
and this is closer to that, sadly.
I mean, all the fucking Alien films he's done lately, and we're not going to get into it because I know you give it time. They're shit. Prometheus and all them, they're fucking terrible. But
I tell you what, again, if we're looking at them objectively, and I'm not going to go into the whole Prometheus thing, but one thing Prometheus is, again, above all else, it's absolutely gorgeous. I went back and rewatched that film, and I know it's got loads of problems, and even if I might defend it, if you come in and just say that film's shit, it's all, I get it. I 100% get it. But rewatching that film, and it's like 10 years old now, it looks better than most movies released last week. It is absolutely gorgeous. And that's the one thing Ridley Scott's always got. And even if I do find this film far too busy, it's still, as I said, gorgeous in and of itself.
Yeah. Right. I do need to ask a very important question. In the Darkness's space castle.
Yeah.
Right. In the Pyramid Head's kitchen.
Yeah.
Who's getting the silverware from that massive shelf at the top? Because Jack had to climb for fucking ever to chuck the biggest plate in the world down ever.
There were a lot of very, very large. But who are they for? They're too big.
I don't know.
It does it again. The whole thing about this being like just totally overproduced with just no thought given to whether any of it makes sense. It just doesn't.
None of it makes sense.
Why? Like you said, I don't even know on a more like serious level. Like, where did that armor come from? Did I miss something? Where did the fucking armor come from?
So Gump.
Yeah, he is a fucking gimp. Make no mistake.
Gump said, "I know where we can get the finest armor," and then sends him into a cave that apparently loads of dead bodies have. But Gump then says, I can't go with you. So how does he know the armor's in there? Because he can't cross that threshold.
But again, there's no sense of him achieving anything. He's just like, oh, there's some armor in the cave. And they just go and get like surprisingly short lady armor.
What's up with Meg Mucklebones as well? Because they're crossing some weird swamp. Why are they crossing that swamp? Was she the keeper of the Darkness's castle? Because that was the only thing they had to fight to get into the castle.
But that's, again, it comes back to that point. Like the shot itself, like, again, we've already mentioned, Meg looked fantastic. The surrounding scene looks absolutely gorgeous, but they just appear there. They appear there, they appear at the armor, they appear at Darkness's lair, wherever that is, despite the fact it's both downstairs and in space. I really don't get it. So they just appear in these spots. There's nothing to connect them together. There's no sense of lore for you to even imagine what might be connecting them together. So you just like, what does Lily's kingdom look like? No fucking idea. There's no establishing shot of any location.
Who did Meg Mucklebones remind you of?
Well, I just thought of, like I said, I immediately thought of Evil Dead 2. But
Thank you. Yeah. Ted Raimi from Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn.
That was it. Yeah. 100%. It was very much Evil Dead 2 design.
Do you know, Tim Curry said something, right? I wrote it down. That's what I said on my wedding night. He turned around to Mia Sara, to Lily, and he went, the offer of a new world awaits your stroke. And I instantly was like, yeah, I said that to my wife.
Well, we're going to have to deal with. We'll get to that. I just want to say, right, like if this movie, as I said, is close to working, and there were times I was like, this feels like a world created by Jim Henson, Terry Gilliam, and David Lynch. It's like it felt like all those three creators, like they had a baby. This is the world it could be.
Oh, it's an acid trip fever dream if there ever was one.
Well, that was the thing, because we've talked on this podcast so many times about, this movie was made under the influence of cocaine. It feels like this movie was made under the influence of like MDMA. Everyone's just a bit too happy and senseless for any of it to make sense. Like, why, right? And again, you're someone who's seen the movies. What's up with the unicorn rules? What the fuck is going on with the unicorn rules? So if they touch the unicorns, everything's fucked. I don't get, why is she singing all the time?
Why did the unicorns? Why do the unicorns bring the sun? Like they're the lights of creation or something. You know, I do think it was cocaine, and I do think Ridley Scott took a nice line and went, right, what we need unicorns, a couple of horny horses, but if they die, the sun goes. And what we need then, let's get some snow in here. We'll have some snow, but then not snow. I want him in space. And then I want the devil, but he's not the devil, he's the darkness. And then, like what?
Yeah, that literally feels like how this film was written. Yeah. And like, I don't get what, the darkness, like it feels like he's got everything in place. Like he's got the unicorns. It feels like everything's in place. The only thing that's stopping him is like he's bare horny for Lily. It's just like,
he's trying to fuck a 16-year-old girl, dude.
I could absolutely end the universe now, but I really want to fuck this 16-year-old girl. You know how it is, right? It's like, okay, I guess so. And in fairness, his introduction, like they knew they had something special with the character design. He comes to the mirror. It looks amazing. The movie goes wonderfully weird for the last 30 minutes because pretty much it's just him trying to fuck Lily and then everyone else kind of making an elaborate trap with mirrors. And that's pretty much it for the last 30 minutes. There's a fantastic dance sequence. There's a weird baby thing, which I don't quite know what it's doing. And I was just like, yeah, this is the weird ass lynching movie I was hoping it would be.
What is weird is this film reminded me of other films. I just said we had Hocus Pocus, we've had Evil Dead 2. That baby thing randomly reminded me of the face from the dagger in The Shadow.
Yeah, no, I can see that. Yeah. I can absolutely see that. Such a weird film. Such a weird film.
The dance sequence was odd, and then it became. I thought Lily looked better when she was Darkness Lily. Mind, I thought she looked.
Well, as I said, she's a beautiful looking young lady in this, but there's like, she disappears off screen for the longest time. Then she suddenly shows up. Her dress is fucked, but again, you don't really know why. There's no sense she's actually done anything other than, well, let's just muddy her up. Then she's made into this like goth princess, and it all starts getting weird and sexy. And again, it comes back to people acting to the initial script. Like, beyond the fact that there are three different versions, there's all these different versions of script. William Hurtzberg's, and I get why he was cut, but in his initial screenplay, The Darkness, I'll call it The Darkness, just sounds better, was supposed to fuck Lily. And it's like, well, everything feels like it's predicated on that because that whole sequence with her getting dressed up, her top is suddenly low cut, and it's Tim Curry, for heaven's sake. He just snarls his way wonderfully through every line of dialogue, no matter how benign, is basically saying, oh, I want to fuck you so incredibly much. He's such a dirty bugger.
How's the Darkness his father?
Because I assume the devil. He keeps going on about him.
But he's the devil, isn't it? Well, he looks like the devil.
No,
but I loved it. I loved it when he's talking to his dad, his dad. And you just get the representation by the flame, and he's going, you have to woo her, seduce her. Like, what the fuck are you on about?
Well, he basically spits out every single line that he delivers. It's such a weirdly erotic performance. It's bizarre, but as I said, the film is so much more iconic with him on screen. He's the one person who's kind of rising to the, I don't know, the tone of the movie almost by giving this, we've said a bunch of times this idea of somebody showing up, like even last week with Under Siege, where you had two characters randomly just turned up to 11 with Tommy Lee Jones and Gary Busey. This is him on screen. Everyone else gives like these weird low-key performances, and then suddenly you've just got Tim Curry rocks up and he is turned up to 15 if anything. It's a big performance in this ridiculous suit with these giant sex horns. It's absolutely bananas. And as I said, that was the film I wanted to see, was what happened for the last 30 minutes, the weird dark fantasy film, because you can see the clash throughout the rest of the film. Like they're presenting this as this Disney story, but based on the original screenplay, based on the set design, everything feels like it has this like overbearing sense of like doom around every corner, but they're trying to scrub that away, but fail at every turn. So it ends up just being tonally inconsistent and weird when I watch it. And that's for me, at least anyway. I love it. Again, this film has loads of fans.
I love when they were writing this as well, right? And they were coming up with the names. So we've already said a few. You've had like Meg Mucklebones, Una, the fairy, Blunder, I'm a demon, I'm not a goblin, I'm actually one of you guys. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, sure.
Pox, Brown Tom, Screwball, Flit, Gump, Darkness. What can we call our hero? Oh, Jack.
Well, I think it's perfect because it's a bland name for a bland performance and a bland character. Sadly, like this is coming from a big Cruise fan.
Do you know when she touched the horse at the end, and the face he made, and then it all went to darkness? Said, "You've broken the rules of the forest." I automatically think that's what he's like with people when they diss Scientology. Maybe like he just pulls that stern face and.
Yeah, that could be like the opposite. Like there's that meme of or GIF, whatever you want to call it, of Tom Cruise where he's laughing, the Scientology thing, and it's just like that disturbing laugh he's got. That could be like the other side of that, of him just being disturbed by something. It's, as I said, it's not even a bad performance. It's just like a bit of a nothingy performance. It's odd because, like I said, he is fundamentally the star, but I almost don't even think of this as being a Tom Cruise movie. Like the world kind of, everything on screen just kind of steals away your attention, but not necessarily in a good way. So, as I said, coming into this film for the first time as a 41-year-old, I found it a weird movie because I could appreciate it in so many respects on a technical level, but it didn't work for me on almost any level.
This film
the last 30 minutes
made absolutely no sense. It went it went nowhere and everywhere at the same time. It stars Tom Cruise, who I don't know if you know this, I'm not a huge fan of, but I still had fun with it. And I think because it's visual, I think more because it's visual, you have fun with it. But I mean, that's not going to reflect my scores at the end of it by any way, shape, or form.
But no, I think a big part of it, because it is so wonderful in its own unique way, wonderfully put together. It depends on whether it lands for you. The only thing I can compare it to, or the two films I'll compare it to actually, were, remember when we did Super Mario Brothers, the movie, and the set design at Koopa's underground palace thing, whatever it was. It was like on a technical level, you could see how the money had gone into it, and you could see how impressive it was that they had managed to create this set. But it was also visually horrible to look at the same time. I almost feel the same with this, only it's weird because everything's built to look beautiful, but I find it also aesthetically stressful, which is strange. And the other film is Godzilla King of Monsters, because another film where I think you could take any frame from that film and you could stick it on your wall and it would look absolutely gorgeous as an individual frame. But for some odd reason, in motion, it just feels too busy and too stressful. And for me personally, it just doesn't work. So that's, if the aesthetic had really grabbed me, I feel like I would have had more to kind of, hang on to, as it were.
Does Billy Barty just play Gwildor in any film he does like this? Because he was Gwildor in Willow.
Yeah.
He's Gwildor in this. And I know this is before Masters of the Universe, but he just feels like he's Gwildor in everything he does.
He's got such a unique voice, so it feels like he's playing the same character, and he's always in like these weird fancy roles, so he's always under a ton of prosthetics. And it's a bit of a shame because you look at this film and you think of all the films we've covered on this podcast and how many of them are washed with, I'm going to apologize now, I'm not sure what the correct term is nowadays, small people, the roles that they got in these movies with fancy roles. And now even like, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, they're using CG. I'm like, why are you using CG? Just Just have dwarves as dwarves, for fuck's sake. I know, it's all very strange.
Fucking hell, dude. He was in the Ghostbusters, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Billy Bat was in the Ghostbusters, not the Ghostbusters we know. Do you remember the Filmation one with the monkey?
Animated one with the one with, the one with the ape.
He was in the live action version.
Oh yeah, that was weird. That also has a gorilla in it as well.
Yeah,
absolutely.
There was a live action.
That came before the
cartoon.
Because the cartoon was called The Ghostbusters, and it was based on the Ghostbusters live action film from, as you say, so many years earlier.
1975. It was a TV show, dude.
Yes, not a movie, TV show.
It had 15 episodes. I did not know that. I just thought it was a cartoon. I did not know.
Oh, no, I thought we talked about it on the Ghostbusters 2 podcast.
We talked about the cartoon and the gorilla driving the car.
Yeah, of course.
But I don't remember it.
I just kind of looked it up when I was doing the research for that and forgot to mention the podcast. But there was a live action TV show, and I didn't know he was in it. But yeah, like you said, everything I've seen him in, it feels like he's just playing Quildo for sure. Anything else you want to add before?
I was just checking my notes, and we went a bit quiet then, didn't we?
We did go a little bit quiet. Like, what do we talk about? Don't want to set me off again because I don't want to shut on this film anymore. If I talk about a favorite scene, I'm talking about something good. That's a good thing.
No, I think we've mentioned about everything. I still don't get how he dove into the water. Dived is not a word. How he dove into the water and then came up into an ice lake, and it was snow everywhere. I think
they were just suggesting because he drove down to get the ring, and I think the idea is that something happened to the unicorns. Again, I'm not sure if it's the cutting off of the horn or if they punched them or whatever or took them away, but the world basically goes to shit immediately. So the world starts to freeze over, and that's why again, in and of itself, it's like quite a good idea that he's suddenly stuck under the ice and it's shot pretty well. But again, you're just watching and going, wait, why is this happening? And you almost have to think about it afterwards and go like, were they trying to do this? Again, it comes back to Prometheus. Prometheus has cool things happening, and you're like, wait, why is any of this fucking happening? So Ridley Scott does have previous with this.
I do want to mention one thing.
Go for it.
Right at the end, after they save the day, they kill the darkness, send him into space, cut his hand off. Mm-hmm. Bring the unicorn inexplicably back to life. Okay, that's fine. There's now two of them.
Unicorn's back, sure.
They're all waving at Jack and Lily. Lily and Jack are waving happily, and they run off. He's a forest guy. She's a princess. Does she run back to that woman's house and still see a frozen baby? And is an entire kingdom still frozen?
I have no idea. All I could think for that whole sequence at the end, just before the credits, was that they just waved for like 10 seconds too long. I'm just like, it's become weird. Stop waving, you fucking weirdos. Yeah, but I think you are on something. What is their life after that moment other than absolutely fucked? I have no idea. Nobody's thought that far ahead, I can tell you that much. This isn't one of those films where they've got a treatment for like, oh, this is successful. We've got like 2 other films. Like, no. They've barely got this fucking movie over the line. This was all success or not. This was always going to be the end of Legend. Was those weirdos waving for too long as they disappeared off into the horizon.
For some reason, them waving just made me think of the Predator credits.
Well, nothing will beat the Predator credits. They're wonderful. This is like so much in this film. It's creepy instead. Oh, they are. I mean,
wonderful's a stretch. They're great, but wonderful's a stretch.
Yeah, and maybe they are a little bit creepy as well. Who knows? Anyway, all right. So on to favorite scene. So I kind of already like it. Really is the darkness reveal. So amazing prosthetics for the character, the makeup and design, all brilliant. The way he walks through the mirror is fantastic, but it's all linked in. So, like, that's my favorite part of the film. The dance sequence is so strange. I guess they're trying to kind of hint at the idea that she's dancing with her own sense of sin. Never really get into that. You just kind of have to go, well, I think maybe that's what they're going for. But at least it looks interesting. I think it's thematically potentially interesting. And basically anything with Tim Curry in it. So that whole introduction of Tim Curry and Lily ended up in the black goth suit and having the dance sequence, that's easily my favorite part of the film.
Did he see Lily before he told his dad he wanted to fuck her?
I don't know.
I don't think he did.
He must know about her though.
Like it's weird because they catch her, that's fine, and then the first time you see the darkness or just his voice, he's going, "Father, I don't know what to do about this girl. You have to woo her." Like
he's just like a giant teenager, isn't he? Basically, just a horny teenager, no pun intended. But he's like cutting about earlier. Like he goes to see them, and he's clearly in disguise. So I don't know how he's hiding those horns, but he's got like rags on him, so you can't really see him. So I assume he's fully aware of who Lily is and what she's doing and stuff. But again, you've got to kind of make these assumptions. There's nothing to back basically anything up in this movie. You just have to, maybe some people, that's why they like it, is like they'll mentally fill in the blanks and create this movie. But I just don't think it gives you enough to work with, sadly.
So my favorite scene, make no doubt about it. What you said is the right answer, but just to be a little bit different, Meg Mucklebones, because I think she looked great. I think the swamp
that would
looked
be
good.
my second one.
Yeah. I think it looked absolutely great. The whole you're a picture of beauty or whatever it was, and then chops her head off and things. Yeah, I think it looks good.
Again, another scene that hints at like the darker elements of this film. Like this film's at its best when it's being weird as fuck. And I don't mean accidentally weird because nothing makes sense. I'm talking weird as in they go to like the full dark fantasy thing, which I think it was initially intended to be. So yeah, that would be right up there. The Meg sequence, anything with Tim Curry. It's like when it's like feels almost more like a horror film, that's when it's at its best.
Yeah.
In terms of loves and hates, my three loves: one, horny ass Tim Curry is the darkness. Easy, that's going to be on everyone's list. Two, the fact that it's technically gorgeous to look at. Brilliant, as I mentioned earlier, brilliant cinematography by Alex Thompson. And three, the set design, creature design, and makeup are all top tier. So even though it gets a bit too busy, all the individual elements are absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Tim Curry, for me, you called it. I think he's great in this. I think he looks fantastic. He's and the fact they left his face alone, which, as you said, is perfect. It's the right thing to do. I wish Spider-Man would have taken a hint and not covered up fucking Willem Dafoe's face.
And plus, like, how good was the fact that we kind of made a joke about the fact that you asked about, was that his six pack and stuff. The bodysuit is so fucking good.
It looks good.
You think of like modern ones, they never look that good because usually and maybe they get away with it because he has like the horns and stuff. Because usually you have the problem like their head doesn't look as big as their body, and there's like that disconnect. But if you didn't know who Tim Curry was and you were just like, oh, that's just like a totally fucking hench dude, you'd be like, I'd believe it. It looks that good.
Walking with the hooves as well, because they probably had to be practical back then. So
yeah, I think it all looked good. Awesome technical work.
The visuals, I think it looked great. Whether or not we know where it is or what it's doing or anything like that, I still think it looks good. The world, even though it's massive and tiny all at the same time, I think it's quite good. And I'm going to go the swamp with Meg Mucklebones. I think the swamp looked great. It just wasn't it shouldn't have been part of this film. It felt really out of place, and there was no hint of why they were in the swamp, what they were doing in the swamp. It was just,
it looked great though. Yeah, absolutely. In terms of hates, one, beautiful but far too busy. I've already mentioned it's just aesthetically stressful. Two, overly simple plot and yet narratively messy. Just everything is like conflicts in this film. And three, an unlikable collection of characters. Like even Lily is annoying. I found Grub. I keep calling him Grub. Gump. I'm not being a dick on purpose. I just got his name. I found like the disconnect between like his voice work, the voice work which wasn't his, the voice work from Alex Payton, all a little bit disturbing. And it, like you said, I quite like Blix, and I quite like the other one with like the helmet who kind of turns the good side, I suppose. But he doesn't really do much. Yeah, I mean, other than Tim Curry, I just don't really like anyone in this film, if truth is told.
Yeah. So for me, I didn't like the fact Blix disappeared. I like Blix. Blix looked great. Blix looked like a wicked henchman.
That was really weird how he just disappeared from this film.
Yeah, because that would have been a great fight at the end, just if the henchman was actually there to help. But all of a sudden, Blix just disappeared. And I still don't know where Blix and Pox went.
Well, I assume you watched the Euro cut on Disney. So the Euro cut is the 93-minute version with the Jerry Goldsmith score. The US got an even shorter 89-minute cut, which was scored by a completely different group, was scored by Tangerine Dream. So it was a really synth score for the US. And there's also a director's cut, which is like 30 minutes longer, but from what I hear, doesn't really add much. I'd like to think, there's this cut where you get a lot more Blix, a lot more, world building and stuff, but supposedly it doesn't really add much at all, sadly. So yeah, bit of a shame.
Yeah. And finally, for me, it's got to be, even though I've said it as one of my loves, the geography of it all was weird.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know where the fuck the castle was. Was it high in the mountain? Was it deep underground?
Nobody knows.
Yeah, it was odd. So,
yeah, it's just like, this will look cool. We'll just have it at this point. So yeah, sure.
Yep.
Why not? Any alternative titles for this one?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Brazil, it was called The Legend.
Okay, that's not great.
No. Japan, it was Legend of Light and Darkness.
It's fine.
Norway, The Legend, Ruler of Darkness. Portugal, The Legend of the Forest.
It was to be The Legend of the Fall. I think that's already taken, but yes, fine.
Sweden, The Legend, The Lord of Darkness.
It's weird because both of those are almost like different interpretations. Like legend is in Tim Curry's a legend, or legend is in Tom Cruise's a legend. I very much agree with the latter. If anyone's a legend in this film, it's very much Tim Curry and not Tom Cruise. Yeah. Jack is Pony.
And finally, Taiwan, The Dark Lord.
Oh, fair enough. So only a couple, and none of them really that interesting this week, sadly. But there you go. Will facts make up for it?
Oh, I don't know. Tom Cruise reportedly wasn't happy with the American cut of the movie and wouldn't talk about it for years because of it. He very much encouraged fans to go with the director's cut, even though you said it adds nothing.
Well, but even like the European cuts, and a big part of that might be the score as well. But I think it was based on the response of test audiences that they cut it even shorter and they changed the soundtrack completely. Or score, sorry, I do apologize.
In the European release print, the face of lead villain Darkness can't be seen until 1 hour and 3 minutes, more than two-thirds through. Yep.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I said, they totally build up to him. But I actually stopped the movie when he showed up. I was like, how far into the film are we before we see him? Hour and 3 minutes, crazy.
Filming was interrupted twice. Firstly, by the studio burning to the ground.
Yeah, that do it.
And secondly, by the death of Tom Cruise's father.
Oh, that sucks. Yeah, this film was just a mess from start to finish.
For scenes filmed in the forest, every line was dubbed in post-production as the noise on the set was so loud. Mia Sara confirmed the fact on the Ultimate Edition DVD.
Crazy.
The face of the Goblin Blix was designed after that of Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones. According to Play 10, she thought up the idea, which was supported by director Ridley Scott. He then had special makeup effects artist Rob Bottin implement the concept.
Rob Bottin deserved every accolade he got for this film because the makeup and design is absolutely phenomenal.
Jack's armor was made from flattened bottle caps.
Well, like shiny, I guess, if nothing else.
Yeah. The sound of the unicorns at play is actually a recording of humpback whales.
No, fair enough. Well, they are magical. You can do pretty much whatever you want with them, I guess.
Yeah. For years, it was falsely rumored that this film was the source of inspiration for The Legend of Zelda.
I can see that, but as we've already discussed, it was very much the end of the never-ending story. It was the big influence on The Legend of Zelda.
When Jack dives off the rock in the forest, it is Ridley Scott's daughter, Jordan, who is playing Princess Lily, and a stuntman playing Jack. This was done to make the rock look larger than it was. The close-ups of Mia Sara added during post-production. Now, you didn't really need anyone else except Tom Cruise to make the rock look bigger than it is.
Yeah, you'd have to really be small. How tall is Tom Cruise? Like 5'7" or something, I think? He's pretty
4
small.
foot in the fag end, and he's fucking tiny.
4 foot in the fag end. That sounds like something would say in a pub in 1986. His kid's 4 foot in the fucking fag end, mate. Fucking slag.
For the American listeners, that's a cigarette end, by the way.
Yes, cigarette
end. Just in case, yeah.
Yeah, if you take it the other way, it's a really weird sentence.
Yes.
4 foot and a fag. It's like, what's a fag end? Like a homosexual end? I don't even know what he means. Would that make him taller or shorter? I don't really get it.
Jim Carrey, Johnny Depp, and Robert Downey Jr. were considered for the role of Jack. I don't think a bit of bullshit on that.
I get it. It was probably a big draw in like 1984. You know, like you said, Ridley Scott, he was still like, pretty big name, and there was a lot of money going into this film. So I can see why it'd be a massive draw. But for all my criticisms of Tom Cruise in this film, like he's not the problem. He's definitely not the problem.
What else have we got here? Anything else? Wow. This is fucking fantastic. Grace Jones visited the set.
Who?
Grace Jones.
That's just one of the facts.
Yeah, Grace Jones visited the set.
Fantastic. Well, that's when you know you haven't got many facts about this. I thought there was going to be tons because it was such a messy production, but no, Grace Jones visits the set. Fantastic. I guess we're moving on. All right, so
one more, sorry, the director's cut. So the director's cut reveals an alternative ending where Jack remains in the forest and Lily goes home alone, with plans to see him again soon. So after all that, she's like, thanks, Jack. Thanks for saving me.
Cheers, Jack. I mean, I thought we were going to... No. I mean, I obviously come down here as a bit of a, to frolic. I'm not going to live in the forest with you. You don't even have any pants. I'm a princess. I've got to go home. What the fuck? Like, of course she's not going to live with Jack. It just doesn't, and Jack can't go there. He's got fantastic hair. Yeah, he looks like Tom Cruise, but he's a forest lad. It's just not going to work. You know.
Sorry, I do have one more because I was just reading this. Scenes that were in the original script but never filmed included Princess Lily's encounter with a house brownie, like the ones in Willow, Lily transforming into a humanoid cat creature, Darkness growing huge bat wings during his battle with Jack, a final revelation that Jack is actually immortal, and the unicorn taking Darkness down after the sun sets because the light trick used to send Darkness to his doom fails. All that sounds like it should have been in the fucking film, except for the brownie.
Especially the stuff with Lily, because, as I said, she just shows up at the end of the film. I'm like, what has she been doing? Why does she look like such a bloody mess? And I don't mean that. She's obviously gorgeous, but you know what I mean? She looks all tattered and banged up. I'm like, I don't know why. It looks like she's been on an adventure we've not been privy to. And that's basically exactly what you described there. She's off turning into a cat and having these adventures just to try and get to, the Darkness's lair or whatever. But yeah, instead she just shows up and it's just kind of implied, oh, she's been through a bit. Has she? Fuck knows. Very strange. In terms of Hug to Future, so this is where we ask questions: should there be a remake, sequel? Should we leave it alone or let it die? For me, it really is. And this, I don't mean this in a mean way, but it is let it die. Like, the narrative isn't unique enough to warrant a remake. There's not enough lore or world building, to warrant more. It's like the world is beautiful, but it lacks depth. It's a product of its time. I'm not, like I said, this isn't in a mean-spirited way, but there's nothing to latch onto. There's no lore, there's no world. There's not enough if you break down the narrative to its, individual parts, it's a really simple story, which has been told a million times. So I'm just like, no, do something else. We don't need to go back to legend.
I liked this film growing up. I thought it was fun.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot to dislike more than like. I think you should let it die as well. I just...
Yeah, like I said, I don't even mean it in a media. It's not like, oh, fuck this film. It's just there isn't enough there. There's not like, oh God, I wish I knew about this place or this. I don't know anything about this world. Why this film doesn't give me any reason to give a shit about the wider world that they're inhabiting. So yeah, just let it die. Live in the 80s, absolutely fine.
Sorry, guys. Sorry, we just had to pause the podcast so Liam could just say, I really mean it. Fuck this film. I fucking hate it. So.
Of course, there we go. It's not even to say, I don't know, man. It just feels like a lot of people, and I get it, like, you grew up with these films, and of course, if you watch this in 1985 and Tim Curry with like the fucking, it looks amazing, all these other things, but there's no way you haven't got rose-tinted glasses on when it comes to this film. I'm sorry. There's just no fucking way. I just don't get it. In terms of making a change, obviously for me, it's a tough one, as I want to change quite a bit. But you've got to sort out the script. That's the biggest issue. The script and the tone, basically. It never quite decides what it wants to be. You've got a script writer wanting to do one thing. You've got a director wanting to do another. And you've obviously got the suits trying to force this movie to be something it's not. And it never quite works. Like I said, in any way. It's not a dark fantasy. It's not a Disney fantasy. It's just this middle ground. And I just wish they kind of stuck to the darker tone that was. And I'm not saying they should have kept in the sex scene between the Darkness and Lily. That is a bit too fucked up. But I think there should have remained a dark fantasy rather than the weird Disney hybrid that it tries to be.
So for me, it's a mix of two. Well, I'm torn between two. I mean, I already said about the script, Lily transforming into a cat creature, Darkness growing huge bat wings. I think all that sounds great. You should have kept it in. Mm-hmm. But for me, the actual change, keep Blix in till the end. Have that battle with Blix. Blix is dark, as he says. I don't even know if it's a he or a she. I know he's played by a she, but I don't know what kind of character.
I think they're implying that it's a guy, but yeah, he looks great. He's fun. Yeah, it's just a shame that character.
And I think that would have been a better battle at the end as well if you had Blix, because all you had then, right at the end, was the Darkness and his weird little hooded creatures running around.
Yeah, it should have been why they didn't use Blix, because usually with these films, what you do is you set up the big bad and then you set up like the secondary bad. So basically, when they have the big showdown at the end, you have Tom Cruise fighting the big villain, but then it gives something, say, for Lily or one of the other characters, because they'll fight Blix, another bad guy or bad girl, whatever, that you're invested in. But instead, it's just completely abandoned. And I didn't realize until the film finished. I was like, what the fuck happened to Blix? And I know that's like for all this film's problems, it's like why you would remove one of the more fun, because there aren't that many characters in this film, and Blix is one of the better ones, so it's a bit of a shame. Never mind. So yeah, video games. Did I even write anything down for that?
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, I was looking at my notes. I was like, wait a minute, these look like my notes for last week for Under Siege. I was like, wait, no, I didn't want Aikido in this game. This is ridiculous. Please go first.
Legend with
I'll try and
Aikido.
think of something.
It's God of War. Maybe God of War Ragnarok. You've got that kind of fantasy element within it where you can travel all over. You can get the forest land, the weird underground, overground space castle. The Thor Odin battle at the end is the darkness fight. It could be overarching. You could have more with Blix. It's a God of War-esque game. Santa Monica Studios.
It's Santa Monica, yeah.
So I think that for me, and I initially thought that straight away.
Well, if I was going to, just because it popped into my head, and it's the sequel's coming out soon, but it's a game I absolutely adore. It was actually my game of the year when it came out. I think it was like 2012 or 2013, which is horrifying, of course. But it's Dragon's Dogma by Capcom. So everyone else was playing Elder Scrolls, basically. And I was the one person who couldn't get on with the combat in that game and went to the fancy world of Dragon's Dogma and said, it's a smaller world, but it's really dense and the combat's fantastic. And part of the thing is, obviously, you're a warrior, but traveling around with you they're called pawns, as in PAWNS. So you have these characters who come and fight alongside you, and those would just be like, established characters, like you have in this film. So you would play as Tom Cruise, but then you would flesh out this fancy world, and everything's gearing towards this final showdown with the darkness. But it's a fantastically well-made game. And the second one really does, Dragon's Dogma 2, I think, is coming out in March, I think, maybe. So it's out relatively soon. I would love to see a Legend version of this. And for all my talk about not wanting to go back to the film, it's like if somebody took the concept and decided to flesh it out, you could conceivably turn it into a video game. So I'll go with Dragon's Dogma, but that's not a million miles away from your God of War. Maybe we'd have to tone down the combat and kind of push the narrative to the forefront. But yeah, I think those are good shouts.
Never heard of Dragon's Dogma. I didn't even know they made a Netflix animated show a la Castlevania. So never heard of it.
It was a weird game because it kind of came out and, as I said, was absolutely not swept in the rug, but it fell in the shadow of Elder Scrolls. What was the big Elder Scrolls one?
Fuck knows. I've never played them. They look shite to me.
Oh, they all those Bethesda games, they're massively popular. For one reason or another, I can't connect to them, so I played this instead. But it's like quietly built up a fan base, and it ended up selling a few million. So it was a hit, but over a number of years. And I was surprised as anyone to see, firstly, as you say, the anime on Netflix, and then there being a sequel. But I'd be happy to play it. So even if it was a Legend themed one, but the truth is, I'm so indifferent about this film. I'd prefer just to play Dragon's Dogma as is rather than a Legend themed one, but that's besides the point. In terms of scores and recommendations, for me, it's 2 and basically not a chance. I wouldn't recommend this to anyone, especially based on the reaction of my wife to this, who's usually pretty open to trying like different. She put it this way, she really wanted to see this film. She's like, "Oh, I know that film, with Tim Curry and Tom Cruise. I'd never seen it as a kid, but I always wanted to." She watched it. And after like 10 minutes, she zoned out. She fucking as much as I have issues with this film, she absolutely despised it. So based on her reaction alone, I'm not recommending this to anyone. It's still a 2 because I think there is some technical brilliance behind the scenes. And I think Tim Curry as the Lord of Darkness is absolutely fantastic. It's just not a fun movie to watch, whether it be narratively, visually, or anything. So I can't give it more than a 2, sadly.
So this is odd. I had fond memories of this. Those fond memories deserve to stay in the past. I still had a bit of fun with it, but not a lot. It's a 2 for me as well.
Yeah.
It is a 2, and it's not a recommendation. I mean, I can't, no matter how much, I can't recommend a Tom Cruise film to people. I don't want to do that to people.
Oh, I can do that for you. I can recommend, amazingly, of all the Tom Cruise films to pick, I still find it amazing you pick this one. I could easily recommend 10 to 15 Tom Cruise movies. And I'm not saying that flippantly. I mean that quite seriously. This one is not one of them. But like you said, Tom Cruise
10 to 15,
isn't the problem.
That's all his Mission Impossible films, isn't it? Because they fucking go on forever.
And most of them are brilliant. Most of them. Two's not great, but most of them are. They're all at least good. They range from good to very good. Although
I only
forgettable.
I think I've watched 1 and 2, and then I watched the one because I like Henry Cavill, so I watched the Henry Cavill one
that was
where
really
he kind of wanked his arms off, and then
that was badass. Like, I mean, the way you've described it doesn't sound badass at all, wanking his arms off. But when he kind of reloaded his arms, I guess would be the cooler way to say it. Like, it was just badass. The whole fight sequence in the toilets was awesome. That was maybe the best. It'd be in the discussion for the best of them.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, so that was a 2 for both of us, and we wouldn't recommend it. So next week it's your choice. So which Steven Seagal film are you going to watch?
I've gone with it. Basically, it's because like we've gone back and watched this, and it's on Disney Plus, and of course, as you're listening through Disney Plus, other films naturally pop up, and you're like, "Fuck, I haven't seen that film for ages." That was the reason the Steven Seagal thing came up, because there's tons of them on Disney Plus for some reason. And one that came up was another Wolfgang Peterson film, because we did one. Obviously, we mentioned it a couple of times in this podcast.
It popped up at the end of mine on Disney Plus. I think I know.
Air Force One.
Oh, okay. No, I'm not going there. Sorry.
Oh, fair enough. What were you
at the end of Legend, Conan the Barbarian popped up for me.
Dude, seriously, I almost said Conan the Barbarian for the exact same reason. I was like, I'm doing Air Force One. Legend finished, and he said, you might like Conan the Barbarian. I was like, I do like Conan the Barbarian. I was like, we should totally do that. But I'd already promised my wife we were doing Air Force One. And after the absolute travesty of the Legend rewatch, I was like, would you mind if I did Conan? No, you promised Air Force One. I was like, okay, we're doing Air Force One. So
I already know the quote you're going to do. Everyone already knows the quote.
Everyone knows the quote. We'll save it for next week, but we know the quotes. But it's a film, as much as I enjoyed that film, I've not seen that film for a long, long time. But I think we're on pretty safe ground. Nope. Is that a pun? I don't know, because most of the film takes place on a plane in the air. But anyway, Air Force One from 1997. Can you believe that?
Yeah, no.
Don't do the maths. Do not do the maths for how long ago that was, because rumor has it that was a long ass fucking time ago.
It was upsetting.
It is, because I remember this movie coming out, and I do not care for the numbers once again. So Air Force One next week. I think that's going to be a good one. And if you are interested, like I said, it's on Disney Plus, so it's relatively easy to access. And obviously, it's on fucking
other things. Other streaming services may be available.
Yeah, you might actually be able to find it on film, because I recorded it off Film 4 quite recently, so you might even be able to find it off there if you don't have Disney Plus. But anyway, if you get a chance, rewatch Air Force One and join us next week for that. This, however, has been Legend. Do you have anything else before we wrap this up? For the love of God,
we had an email off. We've actually brought him up on the podcast before, Stephen Dunn. Mm-hmm. Dear Hey You Guys, don't know if it's any use to you or not, but I've just seen Robot Jox is included with Prime. And then he went and pulled the rug out from under us by saying the US version.
Oh,
so at some point, we will have to figure out a way to get hold of
Robot Jox. Basically, I think you can watch it because you have like one of those magic TVs or whatever. I need to find a way to watch Robot Jox, even if it's on YouTube or something. I'll find a way, and we'll be doing that at some point. Realistically, all the build-up, we should be doing this for our 200th episode.
Yeah. Which isn't long. Jesus Christ, I will be doing this for 149. He also goes on to say, P.S. I'm all in for On Deadly Ground coverage too. That must be the most batshit crazy movie ever made by an A-list star at the peak of his powers. I'm still unsure if the wrestling with the bear scene is supposed to be training montage or a fever dream. Looking forward to hearing you boys rip it to shreds. I mean, is that what we've become now? Just people that rip films to shreds?
No, I mean, that's more your shtick, which is a weird thing to say because I really have gone down this one, but I've really tried to be objective about it, but I just did not enjoy this film. And it's weird because I've come at it more negatively than you, but then we both landed on 2 stars. And I think that speaks to the fact that there's like, sometimes we have this. It's almost like this disconnect where there's one voice in my head, and obviously I didn't have it for this film because it's the first time I've watched it. But it's all like, I've been able to hear it happen to you as the podcast has progressed. It's like you've got this nostalgia attached to this film, so you still kind of enjoy it on that level. But then when it comes to scoring it, we're trying to be more objective and like, do you enjoy it today? And the answer is, not really, kind of thing. So it's weird that I've had the same disconnect where I'm like, man, I have such fond memories of this film. Shame it's kind of shit now. But it happens.
I'll give you a little hint as well before we go off. I'm not going to say, but you have made me by talking in this film, and it's not Conan, but you've made me think of my next choice straight away. So I've written it down now just so I don't forget
fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to actually after that note, but like just doing more Steven Seagal films. Like I have to see this. I have to see him fight a bear at this point.
I was going to say,
have to.
Did that whet your appetite a little bit? Where he
100%. There are at least two more Steven Seagal films we have to do, and that's one of them. We have to do Nico, or what's it called in the States? It's not called
Above the Law.
I always get Above the Law. Yeah.
So I mean, you don't want to do
2 or 3 then. See,
you don't want to do Exit Wounds with DMX.
No, I do not want to do Exit Wounds with DMX. Thank you very much. I hope that's not your next choice. But yeah, the fact of the matter is, as far as I'm concerned now, the only choice that matters is next week we're doing Air Force One. So yes, I've been Liam. This has been Bob. You have been listening to absolutely ragging on Legend, and we will join you next week. Cheers, guys. Oh, and before I forget, where can folk reach us if they were so inclined to?
Well, you can actually reach us on Hey You Guys 80s at Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. But if you want to send us a mail, do heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Send us in your recommendations. Send us in your thoughts about any of the episodes. Just literally talk to us. We'll have a one-sided talk with you on the podcast.
Yeah. We're nice folk. Get in touch. But no, cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.
Oh, and before I forget, where can folk reach us if they were so inclined to?
Well, you can actually reach us on Hey You Guys 80s at Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. But if you want to send us a mail, do heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Send us in your recommendations. Send us in your thoughts about any of the episodes. Just literally talk to us. We'll have a one-sided talk with you on the podcast.
Yeah. We're nice folk. Get in touch. But no, cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.